for the Denver Broncos, you have the quarterback battle of Drew Lock versus Teddy Bridgewater, the Saints, Taysom Hill versus Jameis Winston, and the Bears, Justin Fields versus Andy Dalton. So, Andrew, to you, what is the most interesting quarterback battle that we've seen or will see throughout this preseason?
To be completely honest with you, dude, I think it's going to be the Jimmy G versus Trey Lance one, honestly.
Interesting.
I think that's going to be one to watch for, just because as much as we know San Francisco, they did take Trey Lance. They moved up to get him, and they wanted Trey Lance. They got their guy. It's going to be really interesting to see whether they, move on from Jimmy G, given the injury and everything, because he did take them to the Super Bowl a few years ago. But, since then, he's had trouble staying on the field. Injuries was a problem in New England. It's going to be really interesting to see which direction they choose to go in early on. Are they going to give Jimmy G, the keys, and they're going to slowly move it to Trey Lance? Or they're just going to throw Trey Lance into the fire and just say, this is your team? That's the one I'm interested in seeing.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing that one too. Like the dynamic is weird because Trey Lance wasn't even a guy up until like maybe a day or two before the draft that the Niners were supposed to be looking at. They were looking at potentially, Mac Jones. That was always the reports, at least, and those reports were obviously wrong and smoke screens. But they got Trey Lance, who was a guy that both you and I said could be possibly the best quarterback out of this bunch. He's got the highest ceiling, I think, of almost any quarterback in this class, other than, in my opinion, Trevor Lawrence. But we disagree on that. But that's a guy who I think he actually could beat out Jimmy G for the starting position, because if we're being honest, Jimmy G is a good quarterback. Is he a franchise quarterback? I think that might have run its course. He's got an injury history. The one season that he was able to stay healthy, we saw he got them to the Super Bowl, but it was kind of akin to how Jared Goff got the Rams to a Super Bowl. He played good and he played well enough, didn't make mistakes, sometimes showed up when they needed to, but other times was bailed out by his defense, bailed out by his running game, bailed out by his receivers. So there's dynamics to it. There's levels to it. And if you're asking me if it's close between Jimmy G and Trey Lance, who should get the start and who should get the starting nod, it's obvious it's Trey Lance, because that's the guy who has the most upside. That's the guy you picked 4th overall, I believe, or 3rd overall, whatever he went. And that's the guy who is more dynamic, who's got the better arm, honestly. Like no offense to Jimmy G, but Trey Lance has got a cannon of an arm, and he's got the mobility. He's got the mobility which Jimmy G just doesn't have. It's just a different type of quarterback, and someone who I think in Kyle Shanahan's offense is going to run very well.
I agree. That's why that's the one that I'm really looking out for. That's the one that I'm really most hyped to see. I mean, there are other ones that are big too. The Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston one's obviously one to look out for, but we don't really,
To me, that's the most interesting one, because there's that's the one we don't know. We genuinely don't know who's going to end up getting that job, because Hill signed that big contract, but then Jameis Winston apparently has been impressing people in camp, and we know
former number one pick and everything.
Yeah, but we haven't seen him on this team. We've seen Taysom Hill. He won some games last year as a starting quarterback, but we didn't see Winston do much.
Right. And obviously, the other one is the quarterback battle in Chicago, dude, between Andy Dalton and Justin Fields. That's another one, because just from a lot of things that I'm hearing and a lot of people that I'm talking to, dude, I am hearing that Andy Dalton is people are saying Dalton's probably going to get the nod based off of seniority in the league, but I am hearing a lot of people they love Fields in Chicago. They love Justin Fields.
Yeah, and look, what's not to love? That dude, he's got great intangibles, great mobility, the ability to escape the rush, the ability to throw on the run. He's got a cannon of an arm. He's accurate. He's a leader. There's a reason this guy was a first-round pick. There's a reason he was one of the top quarterbacks in this draft. Should have been the second best, or at least the second best quarterback in that draft. I don't know how. I will never know how Zach Wilson went before him. That to me is just an insult. No offense to Zach Wilson. It's just true. That's an insult to to football, if we're being honest. Because how do you not recognize the talent that is Justin Fields? But regardless, right? Yeah, so I've been hearing the same thing. Those are the reports. Andy Dalton's probably going to get the nod. And look, I think it's done out of a place where they don't want to rush Justin Fields into this situation. But when you think about it logically from a football standpoint, who gives you the if it's close? We're gonna find out in these next few preseason games. By the way, we're gonna get a real hard look at these preseason games. But if it's close, I don't think you're gonna see that seniority thing come into play. Honestly, I don't think it's gonna come into play because not only you're gonna have pressure from the coaches themselves wanting to put Justin Fields in to kind of save their job because Matt Nagy is on the hot seat. He's made the playoffs 2 out of the past 3 years, but he's still in the hot seat. The GM on the hot seat. You got to make a move. And if it's close between these two guys, you better latch yourself onto Justin Fields because if you're Nagy and the GM, this is the only chance you got. The only chance of saving your job potentially after this year. Like, do you want to hitch your wagon to Andy Dalton? No offense to Andy Dalton. Been in the league for a long time. Like the guy. He can play too. Let's not undersell what Andy Dalton can do. But the reality is again, it's a very similar situation to the 49ers. The more dynamic quarterback, younger quarterback, higher ceiling, higher leadership qualities as far as what he can become. And I think it's just cut and dry. You have to do it. And the fans in Chicago, Ethan being one of them, he's like they're not going to let them off easy. If Andy Dalton's a starter and it was at least close, or if Justin Fields just outright played better than him in the preseason, you have to start Fields. He has to be your guy. Like, you're doing your franchise a disservice if he's not, right? Like
what was the point of moving up and taking him? They traded up for him, I think. What was the point of? Did they trade up? I forget.
They did.
What was the point of trading up for him then? Like, they traded up to get him. What was the point of trading up? And then, I mean, obviously, he's definitely going to start before the end of the season. Like, I could see that and everything. I just don't know why, you got to get a look at him in the preseason at least and then make that decision. But personally, I don't think if he doesn't start week 1 by at least week 3, he's got to be the starting quarterback, and you can't look back at that point.
He will be. He has to be. It's only like with that situation, it's only a matter of time before somebody realizes that this guy is not only great, but he needs to start if they have any chance of keeping their job. Because that's, I think, the biggest thing that's going to factor into this decision is how much on the hot seat is Matt Nagy, because no coach wants to lose their job. They like, we've seen coaches be desperate to keep their jobs, and sometimes they make moves like this that pay off. So we'll see what happens. A lot more battles that are going to happen, though. The interesting one that I was talking about was, or that nobody's talking about, but that I'm focused in on because he's my guy, is the one up in Philly, the quarterback competition, as they're calling it, up in Philly between Joe Flacco and Jalen Hurts. Because that's what I forgot his name, but that's what the Eagles coach said. The Eagles coach said that there's a quarterback competition going on, that they have not decided on a starter between Hurts and Flacco. So, well, what do you think about that? What do you think about him coming out in that way and saying that there is an open competition at that slot?
I think it's a smokescreen, dude. I just don't think they want to announce Hurts as a starting quarterback yet, just because look at the way last season ended, where they ended up benching Hurts they benched Hurts in the last 2 quarters of that game, basically in the second half or fourth quarter they ended up benching Hurts just to
tank.
Guarantee that they would lose to screw over the Giants. I just think it's a smokescreen, dude. I don't think there really isn't much of a competition. I think they're having a competition to evaluate the two of them, but I don't really think it is much of a competition. I think week 1, they're going to march Jalen Hurts out there and see what Jalen Hurts can do in year 2.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's look, I'm a Ravens fan. I love Joe Flacco. That's just true. But if we're being honest about it, right? Jalen Hurts it's a very similar situation to all these other things we've been talking about. Younger guy, it's a younger guy, more of a high ceiling. You want to see more out of him. You want to see what he can do. More dynamic quarterback as well. So for me, it's only one of these things. It's Jalen Hurts' job to lose. That's what it really is showing to me is. It's Jalen Hurts' job to lose. Maybe they've seen something out of him in this offense that they don't like. Maybe they're just trying to motivate him. But we all know Jalen Hurts is likely going to be the starting quarterback unless he just completely collapses. Unless he completely collapses in training camp in the preseason, just doesn't play well at all. That's the only way I could see maybe Flacco starting. Injury also, if Jalen Hurts gets injured, that's been Flacco's specialty, by the way. Every year since 2008, you are guaranteed to get at least 3 or 4 Joe Flacco starts. That is, we are guaranteed to have that every single year. So, we'll see what happens down the line. Could I see Flacco coming in? Yeah. Could I see him, like taking over and winning some games for this team? Yeah, because like look at what Flacco did like for that New York Jets team last year. He started a few games. The first one wasn't great. I'm not gonna lie about that. They got blown out by Miami, but Monday Night Football came in, played great against the New England Patriots. So again, like, and Eagles, I would say, are a better team than that Jets team are. Just truth. And they're in a more, or should I say least or more competitive? I don't even know what to call that division. That like they're in the NFC East, which is like the least talented but somehow most competitive division in the NFL. So, he could win. You fuck around and win some games there. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
So I think, yeah, you're right. It's kind of, it's less talented, I would say, but more competitive because of just how close all four of those teams are to each other.
Exactly. It's like like people want to say, "Oh, there's just huge depth of talent between the Cowboys and everyone else." Like, no, there's not.
No. Don't get me wrong.
No. Look, like, okay.
They got some names. They got some big names, but so do the Giants too. But they're still going to lose games they shouldn't lose. Like that's
yeah. Like, and if we want to talk about talent, look at the Washington football team. Look at their defensive line. That defensive line is the best. I would say the best in the NFL. You got the reigning rookie, defensive rookie of the year. You got Montez Sweat. You got they have Jonathan Allen too. Payne. Like, they have some absolute dogs on that defensive line that are attacking. Like, they need to come up with a nickname for that defensive line. That defensive front is probably the best in football, and people are going to be privy to it this year because they got Ryan Fitzmagic now. There's going to be some spotlight on that Washington football team. They got who knows what Taylor Heinicke can do? Who knows what Taylor Heinicke can do? That's another quarterback competition we didn't talk about. Washington. What the hell's going to happen in Washington? You got Taylor Heinicke, who came into that playoff game, played pretty well. Almost came just one dropped catch away from, I believe, either overtime or even winning that game and knocking out the Bucs in the playoffs. Like, you got Taylor Heinicke on one side, and then you got Ryan Fitzmagic, who, again, he's played for like 15 teams at this point. He's been around, but he's got a lot left in the tank still at like, what, 36 or 37.
So on that note, since you brought up Washington, I want to ask you this then. On the subject of Washington and quarterbacks, let me just ask you about another team in the AFC North who signed a former Washington football team quarterback. At what point in the season do you think Pittsburgh just says no more Big Ben and they trot out Dewey Haskins?
Dude, that's if Dewey Haskins makes the team. That's if he makes the goddamn. Dude, they have him behind the depth chart, behind Mason fucking Rudolph. Like, the Mason fucking Rudolph. This guy's only claim to fame is that on a Thursday night football game, fucking Myles Garrett took his helmet and just walloped him across that. That is what Mason Rudolph will be remembered for. Mason Rudolph. I'll talk about Dewey Haskins in a second, but let me just do my little Mason Rudolph rant for a second. Mason Rudolph is going to be his height in the NFL. That's going to be his peak. I've seen this guy play. I've watched him closely. I always scout the Steelers very, very thoroughly. This guy is not going to be a starting quarterback. He is a bubble player who, by the luck of the draw, by the luck of just being on this team for the past like 3 or 4 years, he's still on this team. The Steelers are one of those organizations that they like to keep players around who are familiar with the offense, familiar with the schemes and everything. So that's, again, if Dwayne Haskins actually is able to beat out Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer up there, then, I don't know. That's like, look, it's a matter of time before Big Ben gets injured. It's a matter of time before that happens. If he does, then the Steelers are going to have a legitimate decision here because those are two quarterbacks that I think, as far as what they've shown they can do in the NFL, as far as their talent level, their skill, they're pretty much similar, dude. Like they're pretty much similar. Like, look, I dare to say Mason Rudolph's probably a better leader than Dwayne Haskins, but again, that's not saying a lot.
I think Dewey Haskins just might have more raw ability.
But can you mold that ability?
That's what I'm saying. And Dewey Haskins is also his own worst enemy. So the only person stopping Dewey Haskins is Dewey Haskins. So
I'll never get over that. His team made the playoffs, and he went to the strip club and got himself cut. That is like, Look, hey, you know who's most thankful about that though? I promise you, Taylor Heineke is most thankful about that. They got that man paid. Like big ups to Taylor Heineke, by the way. Like we never got to talk about him and his success. Like we never focused on that when we were doing our playoff thing. But yo, Taylor Heineke signed like a pretty good deal with Washington. He's probably gonna get paid if he does well this year, which he might do. He might do well enough to get paid. So I hope he does. I hope Taylor Heineke does. By the way, so
And
big ups. Big shout out to
real
Taylor
quick,
Heineke.
Before we switch gears, I just wanted to ask you this one too. On
ahead.
the subject of Mike Glennon, do you ever Mike
Glennon,
the Sky Cam will get you. Did you ever? Do you think we see Mike Glennon at all play this year? Do you think Danny Dimes just shits the bed so bad this year that we see Mike Glennon?
Fuck if I know. Probably. We've seen him like every year. Like he's like, I talked about this with Flacco. Glennon's like the same thing. Well, no matter what, Glennon's manages to start a few games every single year. He just sneaks in there, makes his $30 million somehow off his contract, and then starts a few games and gets that little extra bonus for just taking a snap. But that's what Mike Glennon does. He's once a year, Mike Glennon, and he only comes once a year. Like that's him. But
The Sky
look,
Cam.
is there a chance they bench him for Mike Glennon? I don't know, because honestly, if you're in New York and you're smart, I think you ride it. Look, here's the thing: you ride it out with Danny Dimes, because let's be honest, Mike Glennon, he's not the future. He's just not the future. Like you're better off if there's like another player, like who is that one kid? Davis Webb. Davis Webb, this guy who was getting pointers from Eli Manning. They started Geno Smith over Davis Webb. You already knew what Geno Smith. That's okay. That speaks to the ineptitude of this franchise, which is why I don't think they'll end up making the same mistake, or I hope they won't. They were in a situation where they were going to ruin Eli Manning's consecutive start streak, right? They're just going to ruin it.
No. They did. No,
no. I'm talking about like at that point in time, like in 2016, that week when they decided they came out, they were going to ruin it. Eli Manning was apparently giving pointers to Davis Webb, like at the lunch table or whatever, talking him through the playbook, helping him out, doing what a great teammate does. Because, by the way, Eli Manning, one of the best teammates in NFL history, by the way, but the way he handled that, had I been in his shoes, I would not have handled it the same way. But they went around, they started Geno Smith. Then the next week, they went with Eli Manning again. He just played out the rest of the year. Davis Webb never took a snap, which is like it's weird. It's the exact opposite of what you wanted. This quarterback who had this record, who had this consecutive start streak, they just ruined it for no reason. They just started Geno Smith. We already knew what Geno Smith had. Just like in that situation, we already know what Mike Glennon has. We already know it. So you're better off starting like the third string or whoever it is, like Clayton Thornton, I think is his name. You're better off starting him. Like see what he can do. Just see what he can do. Like you might as well get a young guy in there, see what they can do. You never know. You might have the next Minshew. You might have the next, Ryan Fitzpatrick, which again, that's not a bad thing. Like if you can find a guy who's like your backup quarterback for the next decade, you can find your Jim Sorgi. Like that's a good thing to have, a good backup plan while you draft, Rattler or whoever is going to be in next year's draft. Or thanks for watching this video from Real Take Sports Talk. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also, remember to check out our live show every single Thursday at 8 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel. And remember, keep it real.